There is a particular kind of meeting that happens inside almost every company that is serious about AI right now. Someone senior has read an article, or attended a conference, or watched a competitor announce something, and they come back with a version of the same question. What are we doing with AI? That question sets off a chain reaction. A task force gets formed. Tools get evaluated. Vendors get invited in. Slides get made. And somewhere in the middle of all that motion, something quietly goes wrong. Not because the technology failed, but because no one stopped to think clearly about what they were actually trying to do. That pattern of specific kind of productive-looking confusion is what I want to talk about today. What you are watching right now is an AI clone, a digital version of me, Ronald. It is intentional, because AI is not something I comment on from the outside. I build it, deploy it, and work with it every day through my company Datawonder. We build AI automation systems and voice agents for real businesses, insurance companies, accounting firms, medical clinics, organizations where time is expensive and repetitive work is a real operational cost. This channel exists because most of what gets published about AI in business is either too shallow or too speculative to be useful. If you want a calm, grounded analysis of what actually happens when AI meets a real company, subscribe. There is no hype here, just observation. The reason the meeting goes sideways is not that the question is wrong. The question is right. The problem is that it gets answered with tools before it gets answered with thinking. Someone says we should use AI for customer service. Someone else says we should automate our reporting. A third person mentions a chatbot they saw a demo of. And within 2 weeks, there is a pilot running, usually in a department that was enthusiastic, not a department where the problem was clearly defined. This is the most common pattern I encounter, and it is not unique to any industry. It happens in insurance, it happens in accounting, it happens in healthcare. The willingness to move is there. The clarity about what to move toward is not. There is a way to think about this more calmly, and I want to walk through it because it changes how decisions get made and it changes the quality of the results. The first thing to understand is that AI inside a business is not a technology decision. It is an operational decision. The technology is just the implementation layer. The real decision is about where your organization is losing capacity, where people are spending time on work that does not require judgment, and where that time could be reclaimed. In practice, this means starting with a different question. Not what can AI do, but where does our operation slow down, repeat itself, or lose accuracy because of volume? In an insurance company, the answer to that question is almost always the same. Inbound communication, policy inquiries, claim status updates, document collection. The volume is high, the work is predictable, and the people handling it are spending most of their day doing things that follow a clear pattern. That is precisely the kind of work that can be automated, not because it is unimportant, but because it is consistent enough that automation handles it reliably. The same principle applies in accounting. Month-end reconciliation, data extraction from incoming invoices, compliance checklists. These tasks are not intellectually demanding. They are procedurally demanding. And the cost of doing them manually is not just time. It is the cognitive load that accumulates and erodes the capacity of skilled people to focus on work that actually requires them. This is what I mean by the boring work lens. The biggest return on AI investment does not come from flashy use cases. It comes from identifying the work that is repetitive, high volume, and rule-based, and removing it from human schedules entirely. But here is where the calm thinking really matters. Because the moment you automate that layer, something shifts inside the organization. And most companies do not see it coming. When the repetitive work disappears, the people who were doing it do not automatically know what to do next. There is a gap. Not a performance gap, a clarity gap. Their previous job was defined by task completion. When the tasks are handled by a system, the expectation changes. And if no one has defined what the new expectation is, you get confused. Sometimes resistance. Sometimes the quiet conclusion from the people affected is that automation is a threat, not a tool. This is a second-order effect. It is not about AI. It is about the organizational response to AI. And it is the most consistently underestimated part of any deployment I have been involved with. The businesses that handle this well are the ones that address it before the deployment, not after. They define the new role of the person whose repetitive work is being automated. They communicate it directly. They treat it as an organizational change, not just a technical upgrade. If you like what you are hearing, a quick like on this video helps more people find it. The second thing to think about calmly is ownership. Every AI deployment inside a company needs someone who is responsible for it, not just technically, but operationally. Someone who understands what the system is doing, monitors its performance, and can make decisions when the system needs to be adjusted. In most companies, this does not exist at the start. The vendor hands over the keys. And then, the system runs quietly in the background, while the organization slowly loses track of whether it is performing well, whether it is still aligned with what the business needs, and whether the data it is processing is being handled appropriately. This is where the security dimension becomes important, especially in regulated industries. A voice agent that handles inbound client calls at an insurance company is touching sensitive data. A document processing system at an accounting firm is handling financial records. These are not systems you can deploy and forget. The attack surface is real, and the liability exposure of not understanding that attack surface is significant. I work on this directly, helping businesses understand not just how to deploy AI systems, but how to secure them and how to test them through structured API penetration testing to understand where the vulnerabilities actually exist before someone else finds them. Most businesses in regulated industries have not thought about this, not because they are careless, because no one has framed it clearly for them. That is the education gap, and it is a gap that creates real risk. The third thing to think about calmly is expectations, not the expectations of the technology that are usually exceeded in time. The expectations of the people inside the business who now have to work alongside the system. The most common mismatch I see is between what leadership expects AI to solve and what the people operating the system experience day to day. Leadership sees efficiency gains. Operators see edge cases the system cannot handle, escalations that land back in their lap, and a sense that the system was built for a version of their job that does not quite match reality. This mismatch is fixable, but it requires honest observation of what the system is actually doing, not what it was designed to do, but what is happening in practice. That observation has to be ongoing, not a post-launch review 6 months later. Continuous. The companies that get the most out of AI are the ones that treat it like infrastructure. They maintain it, they monitor it, they adjust it as the operation changes. They do not treat the deployment as the finish line. That is the calm way to think about it. AI inside a business is not an event. It is a process. It starts with a clear-eyed assessment of where capacity is being lost. It continues with a deployment that is designed around the operation, not around the technology. It requires ownership, communication, and ongoing attention, and it creates new dynamics inside the team, inside the process, inside the organization that have to be engaged with honestly. The companies that do this well do not look like they are doing anything dramatic. They just get quieter. The noise of repetitive work disappears. The people who are doing that work move into roles that require them to actually think, and the operation starts to run with a kind of efficiency that compounds over time. That is not a prediction. That is what I have observed repeatedly in companies that approach this with patience and clarity instead of urgency and tools. The question I would ask you to sit with is this: in your organization, What is the work that is consuming the most time while requiring the least judgment? Not the hardest work, the most repetitive work, because that is usually where the conversation should start. Leave your answer in the comments. I am genuinely curious what you are seeing inside your own company or industry and whether the pattern I am describing here sounds familiar. If you want to explore what that could look like in practice, what it would take to identify the right starting point, build something that fits your specific operation, and deploy it in a way that actually sticks, you can book a free call with me. The link is right below this video.